Hello, and welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices. This time, we are going to talk about a topic which is like literally it's something that all of us use maybe multiple times a day. It is so powerful a thing and something which is uniquely Indian that, like, for me, somebody like me, I don't carry money in my wallet anymore. It is there maybe as a backup, and that for the extreme cases when I need to. I don't know why, but yeah, I'll keep maybe $1,000 in my wallet. But I usually don't carry money, and that is the power of UPI, and we can pay with UPI everywhere. And to talk about UPI and everything to do with micropayments and how Google is working on this, we have Ambarish Kenghe, who is the Vice President of Google Pay. And Ambarish, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So, Ambarish, Google Pay has been with us for a few years now, and it's transformed also. Like if you remember the first version, and you have a new version, it is almost ubiquitous. Almost everybody uses Google Pay. Like in some parts of the country, I know that people use it as the synonym for microtransaction or mobile payment. So if you could just talk a bit about the journey, where are we? What's happening next?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think most of your listeners and you're, of course, aware of the journey that has happened. I think, I'll take you probably a while back in this journey, maybe more than a decade back, even before UPI started. So I think all
Yeah.
of this started with, almost the RBI's vision of what will happen with payments in India. And they've set up organizations like NPCI, they have Department of Payments and Settlement Systems that started thinking about it. And that's what happens, all successes that seem like an overnight success is generally 20 years in the making. And this is also not different now. So that was sort of the seed, I think, with RBI thinking about it. And then, later on, if you see, of course, NPCI came in, there were multiple working groups that came and started talking about it. And then JAM was a very important piece of this even before UPI could come in. And JAM, just for folks who are not aware, it's Jandhan, Aadhaar, and mobile. Because you need to have bank accounts, you need to have an identity, and you need to have access to internet, which is basically mobile in India. And that all was ready in 2016 when UPI launched. And that was a fantastic moment because all of these things, it's, as you know, in technology, if you're too early, or in any solution, if you're too early, it's bad, and if you're too late, it's bad. And this was the perfect timing where JAM is there, mobile is taking off, and UPI arrives. People have bank accounts and internet and able to do sort of identity and all of that. So that was a fantastic moment. Now that happened, but if you look at it, it took a little while. Any new thing that comes in, it took a little while. We think when we launched in September of 2017, and before we launched in September of 2017, in August, the total number of payments were 17 million for the whole month, right? And I think we're very proud that we played a part in this journey. Again, we are a catalyst, we are an enabler. And if you look at the last month, September, it was 10.5 billion transactions. So the journey that we have seen, because you talked about our journey, was 17 million in August of 2017 to a 10.5 billion in the last month. So very proud to be sort of part of that journey. Of course, this is all possible. Of course, there is RBI, NPCI, the government, but also ecosystem players. Uh, Other folks in the ecosystem who are our competitors, as well as banks, all the financial. So everything coming together is what has resulted in that. Now, I think of the payment happening as like internet almost, and I'll tell you why there's analogy here, right? And that's the story that's playing out with internet. So I was back in 2000. I was actually helping. I was with the company helping build the infrastructure and the plumbing for the internet. I'm taking you all the back to 2000.
Yeah.
But the way internet worked is that you basically moved packets from one point to the other instantly. And that was fantastic. And then on top of it, nobody imagined the kind of applications that will come. A mobile phone wouldn't have been successful if there was no internet, like packets were not moving.
Yeah.
So all of that enabled. Now, same moment is happening with UPI and has happened in the last 5 years. So now you're moving money grams and even more powerful from point A to B instantly with very low or no cost. And therefore, you're seeing more and more application. E-commerce is booming. Investment, insurance, credit. A lot of these things are coming up because there is this basic fundamental concept and it's as sort of, it's like the wheel, right? You had the wheel, and then all kinds of automobiles, everything in the airplane wouldn't have come in if
Yeah.
there were no wheels, because how would it
Yeah.
take off? So that's the journey that we are on. I do think that it's ripe now for the next level of journey that will happen, and we can talk more about that.
It's also had a cultural effect, like the internet. You said, like you have so many people who have, like I meet people, like I know cases where people have given me cash and said, "Hey, can you transfer this cash to my own account?" Because, it's also brought in so many people into the banking ecosystem, and people who would have never been there before. So it has a cultural impact, right? Like, how do you view that?
Huge impact. I think you started with that. I think you talked about the sort of, I think, cultural as well as a lifestyle impact, where you said, look, I'm
Yeah,
not carrying a wallet anymore, because I just
yeah,
I just have my phone and I can make all the transactions like that. There is also sort of cultural impact of even how, so for example, donations is a great example. So when we had, you know challenging events like floods and other things, COVID happened, we put on a donation thing on GPay, and suddenly people were able to do that. Now, if that was not easy for you to donate,
yeah,
where do you
yeah.
send the cash? Where do you send the check? So this thing transforms the culture and changes how people think about how they live their lives and what they do. Same thing with, across the board, bill payments are happening through this. People are now giving, when they want to give a gift, they're giving cash in marriages. So across the board, it has changed. It has changed how merchants think about their payments, right? They take payments and they're saying, look, I would rather have this in digital form. Now, where it's changing even further, and this is creating a financial inclusion already, is we are all very fortunate. We have household help. Now, our household help actually say that, look, please don't give me cash. Can you please transfer to my bank account? Some of them now have mobile phones where they say, look, can you just do it over UPI? Now, there are socio-cultural reasons for this, because when they have cash in their hand, it can get taken away by the relatives, other people who are going to use it for things that they don't want. They want to
Right.
save it for
Yeah.
their family. And back in the day, remember, they would actually wear a gold bead or something. Let go, put this cash and wear a gold bead. Now they're willing to put this in the bank account. So the transformation that I'm seeing in the nation, and the development that's happening is already sort of visible around us, and you're seeing it. The last thing I'd say is that my and I've not done a calculation for this, so I'm going a little bit on the limb here. But my hope is that, in fact, when you're not able to transact digitally, you may keep some cash with you, right? More and more sort of cash will sit out there. When you're able to transact digitally, you keep it in banks, you keep it in places where actually it can be put to use, it can grow, it can get interest. And so I think this is the starting point of people starting to think about their financial journey and future, which I think is fantastic.
It is in a way a default wealth creation for a country at at scale, right?
It is just, I've spent about 18 years in the US before I came back, 8 years back to India. And I came back for professional reasons, and I used the regret framework. And I said, look, I'll regret not coming back to this kind of a vibrant ecosystem. And I've seen that, and it's been phenomenal to see that happen. uh, Actually, no country in the world, I think, comes close to the kind of transformation that has happened in half a dozen years. Like, it's, if you see, it's really like half a dozen years. Never seen nation scale transformation like that.
Talking about the US, I was there like a couple of weeks back, and one of the most frustrating things is that, okay, also because I'm not part of the US mobile payment ecosystem, but yeah, you can't take your phone out and scan a code and, like, make the payment, right? You have to fish for your credit card because you don't have Apple Pay, for instance, here. Like,
Yeah.
but we keep hearing how UPI is now available in so many countries. But do you think UPI and the vision behind UPI itself is being accepted across the world? Is it something that is being recreated across the world? And Google, being a global company, can play a part there.
So I'll come to that question, but I think you touched on something that, if you allow me, I want to sort of just.
Yeah, absolutely. All yours.
You mentioned something about your US trip, right? You said, look,
Yeah.
you were not part of the sort of the ecosystem that was there, or payments and all of that. The reason is that they're closed ecosystems. When you go, there is like, I won't take specific names, but you go to a company and you can only transfer to users that are from that company or a small consortium or whatever. The
True.
beauty of UPI is it's interoperable. So you can pay with any app to any QR code. Just no question, right? It just works, no issues, right? You can also pay from a Google Pay to any other application also. And just with the phone number, VPA will work, like which is like, your the payment address that is there, that works. But even phone number, you just use a phone number and we can look up across the ecosystem
Yeah.
and use the pay. That interoperability, and that's something, at Google we value a lot, is that you create open systems, interoperable systems. Android is a great example. We've invested in open web like that. That actually creates a different transformation, and that's something that has not happened in other countries. And I just thought I'll take that detour and pick on that point, because that's the interoperability piece is very critical to the financial inclusion and what is happening here. Now, coming back to your question of UPI in other places, now that is starting to happen, and which is starting to happen. The first point of that is when Indian travelers go outside. Now, NPCI and RBI has enabled this. Then, when Indian travelers go outside, they would be able to start, and like these things sometimes take time to pick up, but they'd be able to start paying in different countries. I think when Honorable Prime Minister was in France, I think he announced that look, people will be able to pay in France through UPI. So if you travel, so if now that has not happened in US, but let's say if that happened in the US, then next time you go
Yeah.
to the US, you'll be able to pay through UPI, and that'd be beautiful. But that is starting
Yeah.
point. The second thing which is also starting to happen is that I think we are also part of these conversations, but there are conversations happening to say, look, how can other countries adopt? We have had just very publicly talked about the fact that we have had these conversations in US and other countries also. So look, UPI is working in one country well. You can just take that and run it in your country, and it's great. And my hope is that we talk about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam a lot with
Mhm. Yeah.
G20, right? Now, so when we think of world as one family, I think other people should also benefit from the innovations we've had. We've talked about that with COVID and other places, and that's fantastic. But I think there is also a very direct linkage to how it can help India when other people adopt UPI. So there is the same international travel piece. But if more and more countries have digital ecosystems that work like it, my hope is that cross-border stuff, all of these, again, there are lots of other considerations and there are lots of other checks and balances to be done there. But as more and more things being digital, then when they interconnect, commerce, payments, all of that can become better. And I think that sort of results in more economic growth across the board.
So I was thinking in a way like, the US dollar became literally the gold standard for currency. I think UPI will become the gold standard for digital payments, right? Because again, it's been done at scale. What other, proof do you need?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic point. And I think I've never thought of it like that. But yeah, having a gold standard for payments, I think that's a fantastic way of looking at it.
So, UPI itself has seen a lot of innovation, like from platforms like yours and others. But you also have an ecosystem happening around it, right? Like using the power of UPI to create new products, solving new problems, which are maybe very uniquely Indian, right? So, how, are you seeing those kind of things? And as regular users, what should we expect will happen in this space now?
Yeah. So that is absolutely happening, and the ecosystem point is an important one. I think the interoperability point is an important one. The ecosystem point is an important one. UPI would not have happened if all the banks in India had not said, look, on RBI and government, NPC, all of that had come together and say, everybody, can we please come on a single rail so that this can happen, right? And look, we are not a bank, but allowing even folks beyond the direct sort of financial ecosystem to say, look, come, because if you can grow this, do that. I think that creates opportunity, that creates momentum, and that's been fantastic, right? It's public private partnership, between the government and, we talked about that with DPI, digital public infrastructure, which UPI is an example of. But there's also, like, when we say fintech, right? There are companies that can be fintech, but there's a financial and technology partnership, right? There are tons of banks and financial institutions that are our partners. Now, with all of that, there are things that are happening where you are starting to see more and more financial services becoming available, and that will happen. One of the very big one that I think creates, and in civilization that has created innovation, is pooling of money and being able to use it in one place, right? If somebody has a need and you pool money, and that happened back in the day with venture capital, other stuff as well. But credit is a very critical piece in that, and saying, look, how do you create a multiplier effect on the economy? Today in India, credit is, as you know, underpenetrated, I think, compared to the size of the economy, if you see, and where we want to go. So this would have to go up. To give you some examples, I think, and these are rough numbers, we can get you exact numbers, but roughly, I think, if you look at the penetration of credit cards in India, number of credit cards divided by the population of India, it's about 8% perhaps, right? Somewhere there. Uh, in US, that number is upwards of 300%. And other countries also, you'll see, because everybody has multiple cards and credit is available. Uh, Now it's unclear whether we want to go to that sort of 300%, but it's clear that 8% is lower, and that's a proxy for credit. It may not happen with credit card, but it's a proxy for that. Same way, when we take other examples of retail credit, it's 50% of the GDP versus US being 216% or something at a higher GDP level. Right? Now, when you see this, there is a lot of innovation that will happen in this, because today, what we think the reason, and it's taking off, but some of the deterrents for credit is the origination cost is high, because you do a lot of paperwork, KYC, all this. Some physically, some person will go to the bank, or somebody will come to you. So origination cost is high. Same way, collection costs are high, because people may be sending checks or depositing cash, or whatever. And to assess who can get credit versus not is also been challenging, because people don't have salary slips. There are credit scores, but not everybody has a thick file. A lot of thin file folks, and some of those things, I think, in the ecosystem together, you will see will change. And I do think that credit is one area where you're going to see a lot of innovation. And similar to how no, we are not a bank, but we are working in the digital payments ecosystem. My hope is that, again, we would be able to be a catalyst, enabler to this, where we won't be an underwriter. So we won't, we don't have the authorization to be underwriter. We don't intend to be one, but we would be able to enable it. We would be able to use our reach, make things simple, and enable this for a large number of people.
So Google is also working on a lot of new cutting edge technology, especially in Gen AI and all. So how do you think you're going to pull all of this learning and what is happening there into the Google Pay kind of a space?
So the broader aspect of AI, we've already been using, because even to make a basic product, right? You want to like personalize things for people. You want to say, look, maybe this is the person you may want to pay, or what should we show it to you? So there's a bunch of AI ML stuff that goes into just personalizing things. But going next level is saying, look, what can we actually figure out, who maybe we are not going to decide, but who may be eligible for a credit, and therefore we can give them an offer, and then in the end pass them on to the banking partner and say, look, this is a person who wants credit, could maybe eligible, and therefore they are able to underwrite for it. So we are able to sort of enable that process through this. Also, we work with the partners. See, it's one is we use it ourselves, but work with our partners and enable AI for them, and say, look, you could use this technology similar to how we are using it, to enable it to the next level. And this is something that we talked about as we were sort of turning on this podcast. This is something that we want to um, definitely want to enable, and you'll see some announcements coming out of it. The two things I want to be, because it gets misconstrued, the two things that I want to be very, very clear on is that we are not an underwriter in this ecosystem. While we will talk about responsible credit, and it's really important to not over leverage the borrowers, to not risk the lenders, have authorized entities, we are not an underwriter. Second is that we are very careful with data so that it doesn't leave Google. And even when we use anything, it will be with consent, privacy, security, all of those controls. So that is very, very critical for us. Now, the kind of the announcements, and I want to just sort of run through that with you, also give you a sort of sneak peek into those announcements as well. There are five big things that we are announcing now. Number one, I think even before you enable credit, or lenders are able to issue credit, you have to be able to use a line. If you have a card, and you have to be able to use it. So there are, for with we are enabling RuPay as well as credit lines on Google Pay through our PSPs, HDFC and ICICI, so that when people have a RuPay card as well as a credit line, they can just attach it to their Google Pay app and then go scan a QR and pay for it. So which I think just enables this the ease of use of it. So that's the first part of it. Second, we've been enabling personal loans through our partners. We are announcing Axis Bank as a new partnership in that area. Axis is one of the largest banks in India, very well respected, as well as we've been doing other things with them. So we are expanding our personal loans portfolio with Axis Bank as a partner, which again, creates greater momentum for that. We on merchant loans. This is the third point I want to make. On merchant loans, we are expanding the partnership to ICICI. We have partners today on merchant loans that we enable through. Expanding to ICICI, as well as with IndiFee, we are creating repeat loans that are seamless, that are easy to do. So that you will see on merchant loans. We are also enabling sachet loans. This is a new product that we are launching with DMI Finance. Now, this is an interesting one where we are trying to enable very small amounts, as little as 15,000 rupees for merchants. And then they're able to make daily payments of 111 rupees, and we set them up for that. So it's easy repayment. And last but not the least, and actually very interesting, with ePay Later, what we are doing is a credit line product where through us, they enable a credit line for merchants that can be used for supplies. Now, this is very interesting because ePay Later signs up with a lot of distributors, and when merchants want supplies, they can use this credit line to say, hey, I want to order something from this distributor, some offline as well as online. And when they order, a lot of these distributors will subvent their interest for sometimes as much as 14 days, which is very helpful for the merchant, because especially smaller merchants don't get very good payment terms. So tons of announcements that I talked about here, but the big idea is that we are investing in this area, and you will see more happen around this. And this whole thing, internally at Google, we are calling this thing Digi Unnati. Just the idea is that can we create opportunities for everyone, and make them more digital.
Before we wind up, one last question. So, a host of announcements that you have, and again, I get the sense these are the kind of things that will again have an ecosystem impact. It's not like a feature, right? It's things that will make people work differently. Help businesses to think differently. But I want to ask you, of these things, what excites you the most? I know I'm putting you in a spot a little bit, but of all these features, what do you think, or what excites you the most?
Look, I think, I'm a product manager at heart. And when you ask me to pick between kids, and so not like
I've
I'm
heard
just
that
using
before, but
it's hard. It is really hard. And but what I say, what excites me really is not a specific feature or a product. I'm going back to sort of almost where we started. What excites me is where India is. And I think, like I said, look, I came back 8 years back saying, look, I'll regret not coming back here. And not for a single moment have I regretted coming back here. It has been fantastic. And the reason is we've got so many things aligning. So Jam is one thing I talked about. There is digital payments coming in. The moment is ripe for credit, because we didn't even talk about account aggregator, Oaken, a lot of other things that are happening to enable some of the stuff where credit takes off. So what excites me the most is the time I'm living in, we are living in, where seriously, I wake up at times, pinch myself and say, are we really living in this time and in India? So my hope is that you will see a tremendous amount of ignition around this. And it's almost like the rocket ship is on a platform, and we are not that rocket ship. Actually, India as a whole is on a platform, and we are all sort of helping ignite it. And I can't wait to see sort of the next 5 to 10 years, and maybe even 20, and where we go from there. So I hope we get to talk again, maybe in 5 years or even sooner, and I can refer back to it and say, look, that ignition happened.
So thanks for being on the show, Ambarish. It was wonderful talking to you, and again, very exciting times. And we are living in those very exciting times. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Super nice talking to you. And thank you so much for having me here.
So you are listening to Ambarish of Google Pay. We'll be back again next week with another guest. Until then, we are available everywhere you listen to your podcast.